one of my big responsibilities over the 2 last years at Google was to do evaluation for AI systems. So after we've done the training, after we've done the supervised tuning and all the context engineering and all of the other things that goes into launching an AI system, you do evaluation. And I took on that mission and felt this sucks. It's much more fun to do training, right? Because evaluation, you're kind of cleaning up or doing the stuff after the interesting stuff happens when you train the model. Then I realized that, hey, evaluation is actually the coolest job on the planet. And I'm not on a tangent here. Evaluation is important. We're going to talk about the EU AI Act. So, because evaluation is really where you get to kind of engage with this AI technology. Ever since I was 9 years old, I was fascinated by movies like 2001 with the HAL 9000 computers and 2010 with the SAL 9000. And you see Dr. Chandra, the creator of HAL and SAL. You see him engaging and talking to the AI system like he's almost a friend sometimes, and a psychologist in other situations. And I actually realized that being an evaluator or creating evaluation of AI-based system is very much like being an AI therapist or an AI friend, so to say. So I kind of found my perfect job there because that's what I wanted to do. At 9 years old, I decided I do not want to be a fireman and I do not want to be a police. I want to be a computer programmer and be like Chandra. So that's why I'm here today. And then naturally, the extension of evaluation is what society forces upon us when we launch these AI systems. And the most prolific regulation or standardization with respect to AI legislation is the EU AI Act, right? It's the first thing. It's the same thing with, I think it's called GDPR, not GPDR, GDPR, right? Yeah, I mean, Europe was one of the first countries to consortium of nations to agree upon a standardization on how to manage personal sensitive data. And then we've seen many other countries and regions in the world adopt that. And I would expect something similar to happen with the EU AI Act, okay? I am part of a company called Assurance Vector that I'm also a co-founder of. And we specialize in making AI. Oh, this sounds so late to say. No, we focus on evaluating AI systems, particularly after they have finished creation. So we're not part of the local optimization loop as you see in training or validation. As you're doing the hill climbs to actually get to a system, we actually come in when the system is supposed to be finalized, and we do black box testing as well as white box testing if it's required in order to ensure that the system has the quality metrics that it's supposed to have and is safe to use according to the risk levels and the context of the system, of course. All right, that's me, and that's Assurance Vector. So how many, first of all, have you seen this meme? There are 2 wolves inside of us, one bad wolf and one good wolf, right? And I was really coming down to the EU AI Act. There's one wolf in us that wants to read the EU AI Act, and then there's one wolf that doesn't want to read the EU AI Act at all, that hates the EU AI Act. And we'd rather use an LLM to read the AI Act, and that's counterproductive in its own right because it's recursive from that perspective. We can't use a system that's supposed to, we have regulation to secure it to check the validity of another system. Well, at least on a high level, that's true. Obviously, in all evaluation tasks, we use LLM as a judge and other kinds of techniques to evaluate LLMs themselves. It's really the only way to take the step fully into an optimized kind of evaluation scenario. And I don't expect that there are any lawyers on this call. Okay, that's good. Oh, I had another one. So which wolf are you talking to now? Well, at this particular meeting, we're going to talk to the EU AI Act wolf, right? We're going to drop the developer wolf for a while. Okay. But having said that, I'm not a lawyer. I am a developer, right? So what you might say is that this presentation, I mean, we represent the assurance vector. There are many ways and twists and turns you can take with regulation. There's lots of reference cases, etc. This act is really, really young, so I'm going to take my take on this. There are certainly variations of interpretation that you can take. So don't take this and implement a high-risk nuclear control system using an AI and say that Magnus told me it was okay, because I'm not telling you that. I'm just trying to give you an overview of the AI Act. Okay? Why would we regulate AI? I hope this is an unnecessary question. If you're all AI developers, you're probably saying we're crazy to put this thing to control these different things, right? Because so many things can go wrong. And AI is a completely unique technology that humankind have never ever seen in our history, right? I think all of these are important. We want to mitigate harm, absolutely, for sure, right? We want to make sure that these systems are fair and unbiased, etc. But by the same token, we have created these systems, right, through training, because we didn't know, we couldn't figure out the algorithm to create the deterministic computer system to speak our languages. So we kind of said, let's screw that. We're not going to think about that problem. We're just going to take all of this training data, and then we have this baseline AX plus B plus an activation function and self-attention and a number of other things. We're going to take that, and then we're going to let the system figure out the algorithm based on the training data. But inherently, what we've done as part of that process is that we've baked in all of the limitations of humans, the unfairness that we have, the bias, etc. And to the very extreme point, it's inevitable, it's unavoidable that we will program some of these characteristics in. I mean, human language by nature is ambiguous, right? It's not possible. I mean, unless you have very specific scenarios on a general level to make it unambiguous. So we have baked in that characteristics in this system. So there will always be a level of stochasticness in this system. But we want to mitigate that harm, obviously. The second one is building trust. Want to make sure that businesses and citizens can trust these systems. If you pull the general person off the street today and ask them, do you trust AI? I don't think you would get an unequivocally answer like, yes, I trust AI. Do you trust computers? No, I don't trust computers to begin with, right? And I definitely don't trust AI. So we have to build that trust. And in order to build that trust, we have to set some kind of level of what does it mean to be predictable and safe as opposed to not. And maybe the most important, at least from I feel strongly about this. We have to have some kind of mechanism to say to companies or other entities that this is okay to do and this is not okay to do, right? So if we have bad actors, we can at least identify the bad actors and say this falls out of the regulation. So these things we should go after and try to penalize or manage them. Because these are the ground rules for which we build and operate these systems, okay? And now, if I was in this audience and I hadn't read the AI Act, I would say, well, he's saying this, but then regulation is terrible, and it will take me a long time to read this act, and I'm just building a chatbot that's not harmful, so it will just be a tremendous amount of hassle for me. And that's not true, in fact. I posted a replique in Aftonbladet on a debate that was going on, that the EU AI Act is really focused on what we call high-risk implementations. Okay, if you're building a chatbot that's spitting out invitations for your party that you're going to have on Saturday night in a language that sounds like a pirate, you're not going to be regulated by the EU AI Act. you're going to be able to go fly through the process and get a stamp of certification. You're okay to publish this system because your system can cause limited harm. However, if you're building a traffic light control system, or if you're building a governmental recruitment scoring system, that's a high-risk system. You have the potential of creating a system that discriminates people on a massive level, right? A voting system. It's a threat to democracy if it's implemented incorrectly. So in these cases, the EU AI Act goes in. If you're building that kind of system, you actually have to think about these things. They have to comply to these things. Okay? So we have to move. I need to move faster here. But AI is wonderful. We all know this. We've worked with AI for a while. We have new medicine. We have new materials coming out. We're solving environmental issues, and we're getting a lot of other things that I mean, I don't know. Is it worth spending $1 billion to solve the Riemann hypothesis and create a proof for that? Maybe. All right. Is it more valuable than more dog videos? I don't know. But AI is amazing, correct? But AI can also be not so great, right? And first I started to search for content on this slide, and I'm not going to publish this. So you can just imagine all the bad stuff that I would place on this slide if I would have. And the way that the EU Act works, very much like GDPR, is that if you break this law and you get you lose the case in court, you're liable for up to $35 million. Okay. Or $35 million for a big company. It's a lot of money, probably, but it's not super lot of money. But 7% of your global turnover, that certainly is a lot of money, right? So there's a lot of power in this law. And there's a lot of power in GDPR as well. I think in 2025 or 2024 alone, there was penalties issued for, yeah, it was a lot of money, at least. It's billions of euros. We're talking about 10-figure euros here, right? So that's the kind of mechanism of the stick, so to say. Now, let's start to dive into the EU AI Act concretely. So first of all, not all AI is regulated in the EU AI Act. I'm fiddling around in my office, or I'm building a super secure military defense system, or I'm just doing R&D stuff, right? There's no need. You don't fall under any of the EU AI Act legislation. You can go ahead and do whatever you want, essentially. The regulation will not go in and try to limit you in any way. And that also applies if you're building software that you can say or scope to only apply to one of these categories, right? So if you're a provider of system that is only being used for military purposes, you don't fall under the EU Act. But you have to be careful with the dual use, of course, that your system cannot be used or is used by anyone else. And then there are some AI that is outright forbidden. You can, under no circumstances, except for these, maybe, that's I won't go into that, but these are practices you should never get involved in. Crime profiling, social scoring, manipulative, deceptive techniques, untargeted scraping for face recognition, real-time remote biometric. If you see any of these things, it's certainly a super big red light with a loud siren beaming. And then EU AI Act is not alone regulating AI. There's tons of other regulation in AI to control these things. There was a report lately with Grok generating inappropriate images. That doesn't necessarily fall under the EU AI Act. It falls under the DSA. There's been a lot of talk that it falls under that regulation. The EU AI Act is just one part of this entire puzzle. Okay. And then let's scope the EU AI Act further. Okay. most existing laws require regulate the outcome of an action. Did you discriminate? Did you leak data? Did you post illicit content? But the EU AI Act is different because it regulates the tool, the AI tool itself. Okay. So before it even enters the market, that means that your system or tool is under the regulation, even though it hasn't performed any harm whatsoever yet. You must comply to certain rules before you even provide this technology to the public. Okay, you're not allowed to offer it. Right. So the synonym that may be useful here is that when you regulate the outcome, they were texting while driving and they're off the road, right? But the tool itself is like, I'm developing the car and the car needs to have a brake that works as required by the regulation. And here's my test report to prove it. And I have a CE mark that indicates that I have thought about this and I'm compliant to this. Okay, and I can provide all the documentation, right? So who is responsible here? Another perspective on this. In the social media era, you as a person kind of, right, is responsible for what you post. But in the AI area, you're creating a system that can generate things that are harmful, okay? You're not creating a platform that somebody else publishes content on. You're actually creating something that can generate something harmful, the results. So therefore, you are responsible for that. You're responsible for the machinery. So maybe useful thinking is walking versus taking a car to go somewhere. If you're walking, you're obviously responsible for making sure your own legs is not, you're not tripping on them and falling and hurting yourself. But if you're driving a car, if you're using an AI system, then the car manufacturer or the AI system manufacturer has some responsibility. And this is the fantastic world of AI, right? We're suddenly creating almost like a money printing press for content. Any kind of content has never happened in human history. We can automate this amount of content, good or bad, etc. So this was actually a conclusion from one of the chatbots that I'm using, which is an AI system. Right? Which kind of makes this tricky again, right? What are the regulations that applies to this AI system that is giving me this conclusion, right? You can really go crazy when you think about this. But let's get back to the concreteness of the EU AI Act again. We have to distinguish also between two different entities in the EU AI Act, and this is the most important separation in the EU AI Act. It's AI systems and it's general purpose AI. And for the purpose of developers, we look at general purpose AI. GPAI is a good term, abbreviation to put in your brain, because that is essentially an LLM model, okay? Simplified, that's how you think about it. So it's Llama 3, it's DeepSeek R1, it's Qwen, it's all of these things that are available, right? Both in a hosted fashion and also in an open source fashion, okay? The regulation does not make a differentiation there. What is important is whether the model has been trained on more than 10 raised to the power 25 flops. And we'll get back to that. But if the training capacity required to produce that model is above that number, then your model is of a category called systemic risk, and you are automatically, open source or commercial, doesn't matter, you automatically fall into the legislation, okay? Let's get back to that in a while. An AI system is like an entire AI, let's skip that call, an entire AI workflow, right? An agentic workflow or whatever, that orchestrates AI technology, puts things together, etc., which most systems are today, obviously, to build. And there is a special regulation for that. So it's kind of like separated into the LLM that powers many of the AI experiences. If it has more than 10 raised to the 25 power flops, right? If it's just a small model, it doesn't fall under that category, so it's not regulated, right? So that's also something to think about. So what are these models? What is the regulation with these models? So if you look at the large LLM, is large language models by definition, right? So they are trained on probably in the area of 15 peta tokens, right? About 45 terabytes of data. That's the pre-training phase of modern language models. Essentially all of the LLMs fall under here. So that means that they are very general in nature, and that means that they can break at a very, very general level and make a lot of mistakes. So you have to prove that you tested this model, you secured it, and you have a plan to fix it if something goes wrong, according to the EU AI Act. And here is a benchmark for the 10 raised to 25 flops. It's about 8,000 H200 cards from NVIDIA, right? 24/7 for 3 months. So that's 1,000 DGX 8 card H200 systems. That's a lot, okay? For 3 months, 24/7, every single second. That's the electricity of the system is approximately 25,000 Swedish household, which is equivalent to Visby or Ystad, okay? So at most LLMs today are trained on massively more capacity than this. I would say that this is extremely low. So most LLMs fall under the category of, it's very easy to come up to the level of a systemic risk in case you're training an LLM like we're used to see them, the general LLMs. Okay. GPAIs are enforced at the EU level. The EU decides whether you are certified or not, and they will make the assessment if you follow the regulation or not. Okay, not a determination at local level, national level. Okay, AI systems. We have unacceptable risk. We already talked about this, right? You cannot deploy. Then we have high risk or limited or minimal risk. And here is the very important distinction. If you're limited or minimal risk, you have some transparency requirements. You need to document some things, but it's extremely lightweight for the purpose of not creating a lot of burden for companies that are building the AI application layer, okay? But if you are high risk, okay, if your system has the potential of causing a lot of harm, then you fall under the regulation. So what are these high-risk systems? Group one is that your thing is embedded in another product, like a toy, a medical device, etc., or that you fall under one of these categories: biometrics, critical infrastructure, including cloud, obviously, right? Education, employment, private and public services, law enforcement, migration, and administration of justice and democratic processes. And your system, your AI system, is high risk, and it falls under the legislation of the EU AI Act. Oh, and that's, how many think that's unreasonable? Great, we all agree. Right?
Very, very fast poll.
Yeah. No, but I mean, these are serious applications. We want to make sure that they don't break, right? So it's fair to have regulation, right? Otherwise, you can have a local developer sitting up and doing an all-nighter before an election, launches the system, and pow, nobody's liable for that. Even though the entire election went wrong, there's no harm according to the EU AI Act, okay, as a product. That's terrible. We got to have more controls in place. Think of it as a car. You're delivering a system that can cause significant harm, like a car, so you have to put the controls in place. So the obligations are things like you have to have a risk management system, data governance, when training data went in, technical documentation, how do you have human oversight in the decisions, what is your way of measuring accuracy in cybersecurity. High-risk AI systems are enforced at national levels. The EU AI Act has different bodies at national levels that certifies high-risk AI, but they are also tracked in an EU database, which is central. If you're creating a high-risk AI system, it needs to be logged in the central EU AI database for high-risk system. Okay. Good. So what are these regulations? We already touched upon this. Risk management system, that's a regulation piece, right? So Article 9, which is just an example, says you have to have a risk management system, and it has all of these things. I just listed the first one here. Has all of these things that you need, that system needs to comply with. And then Article 15 is a little bit of a catch-all. Your system must be designed in such a way that it provides appropriate level of accuracy. What the heck does that mean, right? and we as developers may say, oh, screw that, that sounds terrible. That's too subjective. Yeah, and that's right. If you're building your party invitation chatbot that creates invitations in pirate language, you're right. But if we fall on the high-risk category, you cannot simply say that I don't care about the level of accuracy. It's high risk. By nature, you need to provide some kind of thought into what you mean with high accuracy and how you measure it. Yeah, otherwise you shouldn't be deploying the system in the first place. I think that's what goes in here. But by the same token, this is opening up Pandora's box, right? Because high level of accuracy, how do we measure that? We measure it by the perplexity, by entropy, square mean loss. Do we measure it by cross entropy loss? These different things. Or do we measure it by application level decisions? So there's a lot of things that goes into that particular sentence alone, right? What complicates things even further in the EU AI Act is all the personas. So these are the 4 primary personas that you take on when you create an AI system. You're either a provider of the system, or you're a deployer of an AI system, or you're an importer of the AI system from another country, or you're a distributor. Let's touch upon the first 2 ones. If you're creating an AI system, you're the provider, okay, that somebody else is using. If you're taking a system and deploying it for the public, you're the deployer, naturally. If you're doing internal development within your organization, which is actually an AI system, and then you're pushing it to the public, you're both a provider and the deployer. Therefore, all the obligations you have as a provider or a deployer is applicable to you within the EU AI Act. Okay? Then there are more dimensions. Are you an enterprise? Are you a public authority? Are you a product manufacturer? Are you a financial institution? Or are you an authorized representative? And then there are other personas. Are you a notifying authority? So there's all of these personas, 14 of them I counted at least, that are distinct, that different parts of the EU AI Act talks to. Okay? And you belong to some kind of union of the sets of responsibilities that these personas form. And it's all wrapped into this beautiful regulation of 144 pages. Okay? That makes it a little bit tough. Okay? So your best option is to stay out of high risk. But if you have to be high risk, you're going to be in for this ride, right? So it is complex. Who are you? Engaging with an AI. That is an AI system that's exempt or system in the role of engaging at national EU level, and it goes on. So that was really the crash course on the EU AI Act. Me being a fanatically interested AI psychologist, I like this. I like this stuff because it gives a benchmark for what we require as a society when we put these systems in place. It kind of sets the bar for the evaluation criteria that we need to employ. So therefore, I am a co-founder of Assurance Vector, and we try to make this as simple as possible. So really our value proposition is, given the EU AI Act in the top left corner, 113 articles, 3 annexes, 68 definitions, 14 distinct roles, and 144 pages of skill matrix. Our job is really to provide products to minimize the compliance journey to the maximum extent possible. It's not possible all the way. There's going to be consultancy services required on top of this. But what we can actually automate and make part of, to take the cognitive and the amount of hours spent off people's desks when we're creating these systems, that's what we want to try to provide. So we do automated persona identification. We highlight, distill these questions up from the EU AI Act to kind of come down to what persona are you, or combination of personas are you, so that we can assemble the parts of the EU AI Act that are relevant for you to answer and provide you with the template documentation that you need to fill out based on the persona that you are. Okay. And this applies to if you're not high risk too, then we will trigger that, see that, and then say, oh, you need to provide these statements of declarations on your system, and then you're fine. You don't need to do anything else, right? You don't need to have a risk management system, etc. And then we also provide continuous evaluation, obviously. Once a company provides these answers, we go through them using AI technology ourselves, of course, or deterministic algorithms where possible, and we evaluate these answers based on the thoroughness or the completeness of the answer compared to what the EU AI Act requires. Okay, so you write down the answer, right, in the template based on the persona that you filled out, and then we take those answers, or assurance vector takes those answers, and we try to see, are they complete with respect to the EU AI Act, or we provide the feedback back to you. You need to also do this, or it's not complete from this perspective. And one thing that we started with, since we have GPAI compliance, that is already in effect. I didn't talk about the timeline. I think in August 2025, all the GPAI vendors with systemic risk are in effect. Okay, that means all the LLMs we're using are in effect, but they're covered in the legal framework now. How many are compliant? Right? My dashboard, for our assurance vectors dashboard there, shows it's mostly red. I didn't want to disclose the vendors, specific vendors there. That's only from a documentation perspective, right? It's not from actual low-level testing of the systems itself, which is not a high bar to meet, actually, the documentation level. We should start to think about this and work a little bit on it, right? Yeah, and that's it. I had to run over here, so I didn't have time to create the summary slide because I was planning to do that in the 5 minutes after entering the office. But I hope I conveyed at least the following. The AI Act, yes, it is regulation. We don't like regulation, but we can all subscribe to the fact that we also like to have a bar of security and predictability, and for the bad actors, some kind of penalty when it comes to deploying these systems. It's in all of our interest, right? The EU AI Act is one of the first kinds in the world to try to address this topic. Is it perfect? Will it evolve? Perfect? No. Will it evolve? Yes. But it's a first step. I think they made a pretty good first shot at this by separating AI systems and models and being very lightweight on things that are not high risk. So I think it's something that we should look at and keep in mind all the time. And then when it comes down to the full-fledged certification process, there are companies like Assurance Vector, and there are probably others and will be that can help out as much as possible as well.